I'm old enough to be your. Yeah, he said, locking the staff room door behind them. That's kind of the point. The silence that followed wasn't the shy kind. It was loaded. Hot. Ruth's arms stayed crossed, her spine stiff, but her eyes didn't move from his. She wore that permanent scowl, sharp jaw, lipstick slightly worn, and something in her expression that said don't even try me, but the corners of her mouth twitched like a challenge. Like she'd heard 100 cocky little boys try to impress her, and she was waiting for him to flinch. Eli didn't flinch. He stepped closer. She looked at the door, then at him, then back at the door. This is wildly inappropriate. So is your dress, he said, watching the heat rise to her neck. She laughed once, short and hard. Jesus, Eli. You've got no clue what you're doing. Not true, he said. I've been thinking about doing this since the second week I started here. Doing what, exactly? His hand brushed her hip, not a grab, not pressure, just a hint, and she didn't move. Making you smile. I don't smile. I noticed. Her stare turned colder. He thought she'd tell him to go screw himself and call HR. Instead, she said, you've got 10 seconds before I change my mind. That was how it began. They didn't kiss, not that night. He just stood there while she searched his face for weakness, and for once, he didn't crack. Then she stepped back and said, get out, like it was a joke, and he left the staff room grinning like an idiot. The next day, she avoided him. Pretended like it hadn't happened. At morning briefing, Ruth acted like the same steel-spine manager she always was, ticking off late arrivals, double-checking stock orders, snapping at everyone except the regional director. Eli didn't care. He watched her across the break room table that afternoon. Watched the way she lit her cigarette with 2 fingers, 1 foot tapping, like she needed something harder than coffee to stay standing. You're watching me, she said. He shrugged. You smoke like someone with a lot of regrets. You flirt like someone who thinks he's invincible. They said nothing after that for a long time. Later that evening, when she came out of the staff entrance, he was already waiting. You walk home, he asked. I live 5 blocks away. I'll walk with you. Jesus Christ, Eli. I'm not trying to sleep with you. You're 22. That's all you're trying to do. He shrugged. Maybe. But not tonight. That made her pause. She tucked the cigarette between her lips again and held it there. Then, after a beat, she said, fine. But if anyone sees us. They won't. She flicked ash and started walking. He followed. They didn't talk much. The city around them was loud, cars and neon and wind in alleyways, but their silence felt sharp. Purposeful. She walked fast. He kept pace. She didn't ask questions. He didn't try to impress her. When they reached her building, she stopped at the steps, not turning. You're not coming up, she said. Didn't ask to. You're serious about this? He looked up at her. Are you? That was the first crack. Just a flicker in her face. He thought she might laugh again, or roll her eyes and disappear behind the door. But instead, Ruth looked at him with a strange softness, like something was unraveling inside her, something she didn't want anyone to see. Then she said it. My husband used to wait for me like that. Eli's chest went still. You were married, he asked quietly. For 15 years. He couldn't read her face anymore. It wasn't sad, exactly. Just hollowed out. He didn't push. You want to talk about it? He asked. No, she said. But thanks for asking. She turned and walked up the stairs, keys already out. He didn't expect her to look back. She didn't. For days after that, things were stiff. Not cold, but careful. Measured. At work, Ruth went back to being curt, hard, mechanical. Eli didn't chase. He flirted with the others on shift, joked too loud, took an extra smoke break. But she noticed. Every time. Her eyes always found him. The third night, it was raining. Hard. The kind of downpour that made the parking lot shine like black glass. He stayed late to help close. She didn't ask him to. At the end of the shift, Ruth came out to find him standing by her car, already soaked through. "What the hell are you doing?" "Walk me home," he said. "I forgot my umbrella." She stared at him. The rain hit her face like needles. Her shirt was already clinging to her collarbones. "You're an idiot," she said. "Probably." She looked at him too long. Then she unlocked the passenger side. "Get in before you catch pneumonia." He did. They drove in silence. Then she reached for the radio, changed the station, and said without looking, "He left me for someone younger." The words came flat. No drama. No bitterness. "Sorry," Eli said. "You'd be surprised how often it happens." I wouldn't. Most of the time, it's not about looks. It's about feeling needed. Wanted. Men don't care about age. They care about being the center of attention. "You think that's what I want?" She shot him a glance. "Don't you?" "No," he said. "I want the real thing." She parked the car. They were in front of his building. She didn't speak. Just looked at the rain running down the windshield. "I'm not him," Eli said. "I know." He waited. Then he did it. He reached out slowly, watching her reaction, and touched her hand where it rested on the gearshift. No grab. No pressure. Just heat, skin to skin. She didn't pull away. When she finally turned to face him, her eyes weren't guarded anymore. They were tired. Raw. And she smiled. A real one. Small, soft. Like something breaking open inside her. It was the first time in years. The thing about keeping a secret like theirs was that it started easy, quick glances, careful silences, nothing too dangerous, but it didn't stay easy. Within a week, the silence began to feel heavier than the truth. Eli found himself holding back words he didn't even realize he wanted to say, and Ruth became more guarded, as if intimacy had exposed a part of her she couldn't afford to let stay visible. They hadn't kissed. They hadn't touched again. But every second spent alone in the same room carried that pressure. Like static before lightning. The energy was there, building, and neither of them was ready to admit what came next. He waited for her in the hallway after close one night, leaning against the doorframe with a drink he wasn't allowed to have on company time. She looked at him like she might throw it out of his hand, but instead, she asked, "You drinking now?" Her voice didn't carry judgment, just fatigue, the kind that never left her eyes, no matter how many hours of sleep she pretended to get. Eli said, "Just one," and she took it without asking, drank half, and handed it back. Then she looked down the hall like she expected someone to come around the corner and fire her for breathing too close to him. "We can't keep doing this," she said, not looking at him. "We haven't done anything," he said, and her mouth twitched like she wanted to laugh but didn't trust herself to. The next day someone noticed. Lena from checkout, barely 19, bored and nosy, caught the two of them standing too close by the side entrance, their conversation just a little too quiet to be about work. Ruth stepped away first, cleared her throat, and acted like she'd been asking him to refill stock reports. Lena didn't say anything, but her stare was hard, eyebrows raised like she was trying to memorize the scene. An hour later, she was giggling with Marcus in the back corner of the floor, whispering too loudly to be innocent. Ruth pretended not to hear, but Eli caught her biting her lip so hard it nearly bled. By the following week, he started to hear things. Stupid things. Casual things. Things that didn't carry names but cut all the same. One guy in produce said Ruth had a new thing for baby faces. Someone else said she only hired attractive temps now. Someone said she took longer in the break room since the new kid arrived. Every rumor came wrapped in a joke, but Eli saw the way her hands tensed on the clipboard when she heard one in passing. She didn't respond. She didn't even blink. But he knew her well enough now to recognize that quiet wasn't peace, it was pressure. One night he found her alone in her office, lights low, blinds drawn. She didn't look up when he entered, just muttered, "You should be clocked out," and kept typing. He shut the door behind him anyway. "We don't have to pretend in here," he said, but she didn't stop typing until he walked over and gently closed her laptop. She leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling like it had better answers than he ever could. "You want to know what people used to say about me before you showed up?" she asked. He didn't answer, because he already knew the tone she was using didn't need one. "They said I was too hard. Too cold. That I didn't smile enough. That I scared people. And now..." She finally looked at him. "Now they say I'm weak. That I'm letting some kid sweet-talk me like I'm desperate." He sat across from her, elbows on his knees. "Do you care what they think?" "I care what it does," she said. "To my job. To my reputation. To the way I have to carry myself twice as carefully just to be taken seriously." "I'm not a risk," he said, quieter now. "You're all risk," she replied. The silence that followed was thick and still, broken only when her phone buzzed on the desk. She picked it up like she didn't care and immediately froze. Her face drained. "It's him," she said. "Eli didn't have to ask. Her ex-husband. He doesn't call," she added. "Not unless something's wrong." She answered without looking at Eli. "Yeah?" Her voice went tight. "No, I haven't heard. Wait, what?" Her eyes widened, and Eli leaned forward, trying to read her reaction. "When?" she asked. "Is she okay?" "Jesus. No, I didn't. Yeah, send me the address. I'll come now." She hung up. Didn't speak. Just stood up, grabbed her coat, and walked for the door. "What happened?" Eli asked, following her. "My daughter," she said, and he stopped cold. "You never told me you had a kid." "She's 19, Ruth said without turning. College dropout. Lives with her father. Got drunk, crashed his car. He's at work. I have to go get her." Eli followed her into the rain, and before she opened her car door, he grabbed her arm. "Do you want me to come?" "No," she said. He let go. She paused before getting in. "Don't text me tonight." Then she was gone. That night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling in the dark. Not because of the rumors. Not because of Lena or Marcus or the way Ruth had looked at him in the office like she was 2 steps from shattering. It was because of the sudden, sharp weight in her voice when she said "my daughter." It made everything feel real in a way that caught him off guard. For a moment he imagined it Ruth 20 years ago, holding a baby. A life she had long before he ever showed up. A life she hadn't let him see until now. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if she ever would again. He didn't hear from her for 5 days. Not a call, not a message, not even the usual clipped nod when she passed him in the back hallway. She went cold, efficient, silent. The kind of silence that didn't leave space for questions. When Eli approached her at the loading dock, she didn't stop walking. When he tried to catch her after a shift, she said, "I'm busy," and kept moving. By the 4th day, he stopped trying to get her alone. He thought maybe this was her exit. Maybe the silence was her way of cutting the thread before it pulled too tight. But he saw her hands trembling when she thought no one was looking, and he noticed she wore the same pair of black pants 3 days in a row without ironing them, something she never used to do. She was unraveling. Just not in a way anyone else could see. On the 6th night, she came to him. He was alone in the back stairwell, killing time with a bag of chips and a music app he barely listened to. She stepped into the stairwell and shut the door behind her without a word. He stood up fast. Her eyes were already red. Not crying, just exhausted. She didn't sit down. She just looked at him and said, "I lied. She doesn't live with her father. She lives with me." He stopped calling 2 years ago. Eli didn't speak. She got a DUI. Spent the night in a holding cell, Ruth went on. I drove 2 hours to get her. She didn't say thank you. Didn't even look at me. He stepped closer but kept his hands at his sides. She hates me, she said. Thinks I'm a fraud. Thinks I ruined her life. That I threw away our family for pride. Eli said, did you? I stayed with him for years longer than I should have because I was scared of exactly this, Ruth answered. Then I left, and she never forgave me. Not for leaving. Not for surviving after I did. He waited, then finally said, is that why you pulled away from me? I pulled away because I saw how she looked at me that night. Like I was pathetic. Like I'd become everything she expected me to become after the divorce. You're not. You don't know that. He stepped in then, slow and close, until she could feel the heat from his body but not the touch. I know what I see when I look at you, he said. I know how I feel when I'm near you. And I'm not confused about why. She looked up at him, really looked, for the first time since the silence started. Then she asked, why are you still here? Because you don't scare me. That made her eyes go sharp. You should be scared, she said. I'm not some fantasy. I'm 42. I've been through things you've never had to think about. I've made compromises I'm not proud of. And I don't have time for a relationship that only exists in stairwells and side doors. He said, then let's stop hiding. That broke her composure. Don't say that, she said, backing off. You don't know what that means. I know I'd rather be caught telling the truth than living like I'm someone else. You think this is a movie? That people just applaud when you do the brave thing? I lose my job, Eli. I lose my credibility. I lose the one place I built something stable. You won't lose me. You don't get to promise that. They stood in silence. The kind of silence that felt like the start of a fight neither of them wanted to finish. Eventually she opened the door and left without saying goodbye. The next time they met was not on purpose. She was at the pharmacy, checking out. He walked in without seeing her first. He only noticed when she turned sharply at the sound of his voice and froze halfway to the exit. There was someone with her. Her daughter. She was tall, thin, dyed hair, chipped black nails, a phone in one hand and a look of practiced disinterest on her face. She looked over when Ruth stiffened and said, what, without lowering the volume. Ruth muttered something and tried to pull her toward the exit, but it was too late. Eli was already walking up. He kept his tone casual. Didn't expect to see you here. Ruth gave him a look so cold it could have stopped a car. Her daughter raised an eyebrow. Who's this? She asked. No one, Ruth said. Eli felt the hit in his gut. Wow, the girl said, eyeing him up and down. He looks younger than me. Ruth didn't speak. Eli didn't either. They left quickly. That night, a message came through. It wasn't a text. It was a voicemail. He listened to it in the dark, the screen dim, his apartment quiet. She said, I'm sorry I said you were no one. I was cornered. I panicked. I haven't told her about you, and I don't know how I ever could. Then silence for 5 seconds. Then, I still want this. But I don't know how long we can keep it from falling apart. That was it. No goodbye. Just her voice, small and tired, cracking at the edges like she was holding back more than he could ever ask her to say. And for the first time since they met, he wasn't sure they were going to survive it. Ruth didn't show up to work the next day, or the day after. On the third day, someone said she was taking personal leave. No one knew why. Eli heard 2 different versions of the story within 10 minutes, one about a family emergency, another about health problems, and neither sounded convincing. Lena kept glancing at him whenever Ruth's name came up, and Marcus made some half-assed joke about her finally cracking. Eli didn't laugh. He waited. He kept his head down. But inside, the pressure was climbing fast. On the 5th night, he got a call. It wasn't from Ruth. It was from a number he didn't recognize, and when he answered, a voice he hadn't heard before said, "You're the guy my mother's been seeing." There was no question in her tone. It was flat. Uninterested, in denial. He almost hung up. Instead, he said, "Who is this?" and the voice replied, "I found your name on her phone. You're the only contact she's called more than twice in the last 2 weeks." He didn't speak. The voice, her daughter, obviously waited 2 seconds, then said, "She's been in bed for 2 days. She won't eat. She won't talk to anyone. I thought maybe you'd want to know since you're apparently the big secret." He asked, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't care who you are," she said. "But I care about what she turns into when people leave." He didn't ask for the address. She gave it to him anyway. Then she hung up. Eli stood in his apartment for 10 minutes before moving. When he finally left, he didn't take anything with him. No gift. No flowers. No plan. Just keys in his phone and a cold sense of something sharp in his chest. She didn't answer the door at first. He knocked twice. No sound. Then he knocked again, harder, and heard the slow shuffle of movement behind the door. It opened an inch. Ruth's face appeared in the gap. Her eyes were dull. He said, "Let me in." She didn't move. He added, "I'm not here to argue." The door opened wider. She walked back without a word. He stepped inside, closed it behind him, and followed her into the living room. She sat down slowly on the couch like her limbs were heavier than usual. There were 2 mugs on the coffee table, both untouched. The TV was on but muted. A blanket was crumpled on the floor like she hadn't bothered to fix anything since the last time she got up. "You look like hell," he said. She let out a breath through her nose. "I deserve it." "No, you don't. I said you were no one. You already apologized." "I didn't mean it." "I know." She leaned back against the couch cushion and stared at the wall, not at him. "She won't speak to me now. Says I've been lying to her longer than her father ever did." "Is that what you believe?" "I don't know what I believe anymore." Eli stepped closer but didn't sit. "You can shut me out. You can end this if you want. But don't tell yourself you did it for her." Her jaw tightened. "Don't pretend this is some sacrifice," he said. "If you're scared, just say it." "You think I'm scared of you," she snapped. "I think you're scared of needing something that doesn't come with a guarantee." She stood. Her face was tight, tired, but suddenly awake. "You don't understand what this looks like from the outside." "I don't care what it looks like." "You should." "Well, I don't." She stared at him, and then without warning, her hands were on his face. She kissed him. Hard. Desperate. Not delicate. He didn't hesitate. He pulled her in and kissed her like he hadn't touched anyone in years. It wasn't romantic. It was raw. They stood there in the dim living room while the muted TV flickered and the clock ticked louder than necessary. When she finally pulled away, her voice was hoarse. "If someone sees us, then they'll see us." The door opened. They both turned at once. Her daughter stood in the hallway. Hair wet. Towel over one shoulder. Frozen in place. Ruth didn't speak. Eli didn't move. The girl stared at them, jaw set, and said, "Right. So I wasn't wrong." Ruth took one step forward. "It's not what you think." "Don't," her daughter said. "Don't insult me." Then she turned and walked back into her room. The door slammed. Ruth sat down slowly, like the air had been knocked out of her. Eli watched her try to breathe. He sat next to her and didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "I should have told her before." She already knew. "I should have told her anyway." Eli didn't argue. They sat there until the silence got thick again. Then she said, "She's going to tell people." "Probably. You're going to lose your job. So will you." And then what? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, then we deal with it. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she didn't ask him to leave. 2 days after the hallway door slammed, Ruth returned to work. No announcement, no explanation, no change in how she held herself, but everyone noticed. Not because she said or did anything differently, but because she had gone from invisible to watched. It wasn't just the usual office gossip now, it was tension. People gave her more space. Managers kept their voices too polite. Nobody confronted her, but eyes followed her across the floor like they were waiting for something to happen. Eli felt it too, especially during shift meetings, when someone always glanced between them for a second too long. Neither of them acknowledged it out loud, but the air around them shifted, sharp and impatient. The quiet had become dangerous. They didn't speak at work. Not once. Not even a glance. It was a rule they both agreed on without needing to say it. Eli kept to the back half of the store, took longer restocks, avoided the break room when she was inside. She barely left her office. It was survival now, just keep moving, keep clean, keep breathing. But when his name was called on the intercom on Friday afternoon, he knew something had changed. Eli Myers to the manager's office. His stomach dropped. He moved slowly. When he opened the door, Ruth wasn't there. It was Gerald from corporate, seated behind her desk like he already owned the place. "Have a seat," he said. Eli sat. "We've received a complaint." He didn't blink. "From who?" "That's confidential." "What kind of complaint?" "You've been seen exiting the building after hours with your supervisor." "More than once. Also entering the building off schedule. Employees have noticed extended periods of both your absences overlapping. There are questions about conduct." He stayed quiet. Gerald folded his hands. "We're not making assumptions. But we are conducting a review. During this process, we're asking that you take unpaid leave until further notice." Eli exhaled slowly. "You're suspending me. We're protecting everyone involved." He stood up. "Is Ruth getting the same?" "That's also confidential." Eli left the room without another word. She was waiting outside. Her face was pale. He didn't stop. He walked past her like she was no one, like they'd never spoken, never touched, never even shared a single cigarette behind the warehouse. She didn't follow. He walked out through the main entrance. As he passed through the automatic doors, he caught a glimpse of Lena behind customer service, watching him leave with a look that wasn't quite satisfaction, but wasn't far from it either. That night, he didn't go home. He took a bus out of the city. Just far enough to get air. When he checked his phone 5 hours later, there were 3 missed calls and 1 message. It was from Ruth. "I didn't report you. I swear. I wouldn't. But I'm being reviewed too. I don't know how to stop this." He didn't answer. The next morning, he woke up to a news alert in the employee group chat. Not public, but loud enough. A forwarded message from someone in HR. A general statement about personal conduct and managerial boundaries. No names. No direct accusations. But everyone knew what it was. It spread by noon. Everyone at the store had read it by the time he was back in the city. He didn't go to her apartment. She came to his. She knocked once. He opened. She looked like she hadn't slept, but didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped inside, shut the door behind her, and stood near the kitchen with her arms tight to her body. "I'm done," she said. "I walked out. Turned in my keys. I'm not going back." Eli leaned against the wall. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." "You could fight it. They already decided." He looked at her. "What do you want from me?" "I don't want anything from you," she said. "But I'm not going to pretend I don't care." "So what now?" "I don't know that either." He walked past her into the kitchen, poured water, drank half, and set the glass down. You said you wanted this. I did. Still do? She hesitated. I want it without wrecking everything else. You don't get both. I know. She stepped closer. I didn't plan this. I didn't wake up one day and think, I'm going to ruin a career over some guy barely out of school. But you were kind. You were real. And it got under my skin. You reminded me of who I was before everything turned into survival. He stayed silent. She kept going. My daughter won't speak to me. She's staying with a friend. She says she can't look at me without seeing the lie. He finally looked at her. Do you think we were a mistake? No. But maybe we didn't belong in the same story. He nodded. Maybe. She stepped forward. But I'm not sorry for it. Neither am I. They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. They just stood there in the small kitchen like everything they'd been holding back had finally landed. He wanted to say more. He wanted to ask her to stay. But he didn't. Instead, he asked, Are you going to disappear? I don't want to. Then don't. She smiled. Faint. Barely there. Maybe not yet. She left after that. No promises. No plans. Just silence. A week passed. Then 2. He didn't hear from her. He applied for other jobs. Took a night shift at a warehouse outside the city. Deleted the workgroup chat. Moved on, mostly. Then one night, months later, he found a letter taped to his door. No name. Just his first initial. Inside, there were 3 lines. I told her the truth. She still won't speak to me. But I don't regret telling her. No signature. Just a phone number he already knew by heart. He didn't call. Not right away. He stared at the number for a long time, and then folded the paper in half and slid it into the drawer beside his bed. He'd decide later. There was still time. Maybe.